The weekend visitors. 4 o'clock. They would arrive any minute. Mrs. Harland stepped into her small back garden and stood very still. She breathed in the quiet afternoon air as if she were storing it inside herself. She felt almost guilty, as if she were saying goodbye to something precious, her peaceful life before the noise arrived. Of course she loved her daughters. She waited for their weekend visits all week. But just before they arrived, she always felt the same, as if the calm of the house gathered itself into one soft shape and slipped away the moment she heard voices on the hill. Now she heard them, loud, excited, calling to each other before she could even see them. She walked through the hall where sunlight lay in bright patches on the polished floor and went to wait at the little green gate as she always did. The girls would have been puzzled, even hurt, if she hadn't been there to meet them. Soon she saw them, 4 energetic young women climbing the hill from the station, swinging their suitcases as if they were nothing. One girl was new, the friend from Celia's office. Her name was Nancy, but the girls called her Nibbles. The moment they reached the gate, 3 of them threw their arms around their mother, all talking at once. She could hardly understand the word, but she caught Nibbles and turned to greet the 4th girl with a warm smile. Inside the house they were everywhere, upstairs, downstairs, shouting from room to room, opening cupboards and laughing at old memories. They wanted to help make tea, but everything took twice as long with all their chatter, jokes and discoveries. "Look, my old mug! Try this honey jar, perfect for the flat. Who wants candied peel? Don't you just love candied peel?" At last they sat around a small dining table, the scent of the garden drifting in through the open window. The girls talked all at once, as if each one were afraid to stop in case she missed something. Their mother smiled quietly, feeling part love and part panic. She adored them, kind, good-hearted, lively girls, but their noise and constant movement overwhelmed her, just as their father's energy once had. All afternoon the house shook with dancing, music, laughter, cushion fights, sudden plans, and endless games. They begged her to join them, spinning her around the drawing room until she protested, dizzy and breathless. They never understood how she could enjoy silence, books, or simply sitting in the garden. To them she was sweet and funny, and they assumed she was lonely in the country. Even at night the house stayed busy. She heard squeals, footsteps rushing up and downstairs, whispered jokes, and shouts of laughter. Occasionally one of them remembered to say, "Hush, we mustn't wake Mother," but the noise soon rose again. She lay awake, listening, feeling as though the house itself were frightened and she had to protect it by staying awake. Morning brought new chaos. Cartwheels in the hall, someone sliding down the banister, jazz music from the drawing room, and half-dressed girls wandering about as though the house were a playground. By lunchtime she felt exhausted, though the girls themselves were only just warming up. The day passed in the same whirlwind, picking apples in the garden, tobogganing down the stairs on trays, arguments about who would shower first, and endless plans for the next visit. Suddenly it was nearly time for their train. They realized it far too late, as they always did. At once the house exploded with noise. They ran from room to room, throwing clothes into bags, searching for hairbrushes, asking for jam, honey, currants, anything they could take back to London. "Where are my pyjamas? Mother, have you seen my shoes? Let me take this tin of sardines. Oh, I must have some flowers." They rushed into the garden, breaking off flowers in fistfuls, and then charged back into the hall to grab the neat parcels of cake and apples she had prepared for them. They kissed her quickly, calling out, "We've had the best time. We'll be back next weekend. Don't get lonely." Then they were gone, running down the hill towards the station, shouting to each other, laughing, waving. At the bend in the road, they turned and waved again, their voices echoing faintly as they disappeared. Mrs. Harland stood at the gate for a moment longer. In the distance, she heard the train whistle. Yes, they had caught it, just in time, as always. Silence slowly settled over the garden. She walked back inside, paused in the silent hall, then went out again into her quiet garden. The evening light lay gently over the flowers. She closed her eyes and smiled a soft, peaceful smile and turned her face towards the setting sun and the week ahead. Today's episode was inspired by the short story Weekend by Richmal Crompton. It was originally published in 1931. And now, let's go through some useful vocabulary you can take away from the story. They would arrive any minute. If something will happen any minute, it means very soon. This phrase is often used to build anticipation or tension. Example, the bus should be here any minute. She breathed in the quiet afternoon air. To breathe in something can mean simply to inhale, but it's often used more figuratively to show that someone is consciously enjoying a moment. For example, she stepped outside and breathed in the cool morning air. All talking at once. When people are all talking at once, everyone is speaking at the same time, usually loudly and excitedly. Example, the children were all talking at once and I couldn't follow the conversation. Everything took twice as long. If something takes twice as long, it means it takes much longer than expected. Example, cooking with the kids took twice as long as usual. Spinning her around the room until she protested. To protest means to object or complain about something. For example, lots of people protested about the new working hours. Their noise and constant movement overwhelmed her. If something overwhelms you, it is almost too much for you to manage, either physically or emotionally. Example, the amount of work completely overwhelmed her. All afternoon, the house shook with dancing, music, and laughter. If a place shakes with noise or activity, it's a vivid way of saying it is extremely loud and lively. For example, the hall shook with applause. The day passed in the same whirlwind. A whirlwind describes a period of fast, chaotic activity. For example, the first week at the new job was a whirlwind. They rushed from room to room. To rush means to move very quickly, often because you're late or stressed. Example, she rushed out of the house without her keys. They had caught the train just in time. To do something just in time means to succeed at the very last possible moment. For example, we arrived at the airport just in time to catch the plane. Before we wrap up, here are a few questions to invite you to think more deeply about the story. If you wish, you can share your answers in the comments below. Find moments in the story that show Mrs. Harland's love for her daughters and moments that show her need for peace. Do you think these feelings conflict with each other? Why do you think Mrs. Harland smiles at the end? What does the silence mean to her? Do you relate more to Mrs. Harland or to her daughters? Are you someone who enjoys lively company or someone who needs quiet to feel comfortable? I hope you've enjoyed this story. In episode 4, we're heading to Mars for a classic slice of 1950s science fiction. A small frontier town, a crooked setup, and a robot who takes the law a little too seriously. It's funny, fast-paced, and full of that classic pulpy sci-fi charm, with plenty of interesting language to explore along the way. Until then, happy listening!